Well, it's time now for a look at the latest business news and the economic issues being discussed at the summit of EU and African Union leaders in Brussels. Well, our business editor Stephen Carroll is here in studio with me with more.
Sharon, this is a meeting that is of political leaders, but there will be major economic issues discussed at it as well, as the European Union tries to boost its relations with its African neighbours in the face of competition from investment from Russia and China. The EU is coming to this meeting with a €150 billion investment plan over the next 7 years. The Europeans want that public and private money to go to projects that boost internet access, transport links and renewable energy, but details of the funding remain vague. French President Emmanuel Macron will co-chair a roundtable on financing growth. He told an audience of African business leaders in Paris on Wednesday that this will include European countries committing to reallocating finance from the International Monetary Fund to a total of $100 billion. Now, that plan was announced last year, but President Macron says the deal for the so-called special drawing rights should be finalised by tomorrow.
Our second objective is more technical. It's to use this money so that it goes to regional development banks, so that it can be leveraged. So over the next 48 hours, we have to find a technical way to do this. I know we will manage, with the help of the European Central Bank, the regional development banks, like the EBRD and the EIB, with us here today, as well as the IMF and its capacity of innovation to find the right way. And then, as was already said, we need to make sure the money arrives on the ground.
Nigeria's state-run oil company has begun delivering emergency fuel supplies to petrol stations after a week-long shortage. The problems led to long queues at petrol stations, the authorities blaming the situation on imports of cheaper, contaminated fuel. James Mulholland has the story.
Tempers flare as people queue for hours in the hope of filling up their tanks. Life has ground to a halt for millions in the larger city Lagos and the capital Abuja. They've been left hunting for uncontaminated petrol after recent imports of cheap fuel, which, many have complained, has damaged their vehicles and their livelihoods.
Today, I couldn't make anything. Yesterday, today, I'm here. And my family are suffering one way or the other.
Definitely affects all of my plans. It affects even my health. You know, what do I do?
The state-run oil company on Tuesday began emergency supplies to stations in the hope of easing the crisis. Despite being Africa's top producer of crude oil, the country relies on petrol imports to meet domestic demand. Nigerians depend heavily on petrol and diesel, not just for vehicles and industry, but also to power most homes and businesses. Experts say the shortage will take a heavy toll on the economy.
We're already seeing the impact on the economy in the sense of limited productivity. We've seen the cost of public transportation rise, at least in Lagos and Abuja. The impact in terms of productivity and growth is huge. And we may also see it affect inflation.
Authorities have promised to recall the bad fuel from the market and sanction the importers. They appealed to Nigerians to avoid panic buying, assuring the public that normal supply would be restored in the coming days.
The United States has accused China of causing serious harm to workers and businesses with its trade policies. This in the latest annual review of China's compliance with World Trade Organization commitments. US Trade Representative Catherine Tai says the US needs to update its domestic trade rules to deal with China's expanded state-led policies. The reporter also found that the agreement reached by the Trump administration with Beijing failed to address American concerns about Chinese support for its industry. According to the trade representative, China's policies and practices challenge the premise of the WTO's rules and cause serious harm to workers and businesses around the world, particularly in industries targeted by China's industrial plans. Next, Airbus reported record profits for 2021 after 2 years of losses at the aerospace giant. The company earned €4.2 billion in net profit last year, boosted by an increase in jet deliveries as passenger travel began to pick up. Airbus is targeting 720 commercial aircraft deliveries this year, up around a fifth from 2021. Well, let's take a look at what's happening on the markets next for you. And it's a mixed picture on Asian shares. Worries over the situation between Russia and Ukraine still causing concern on the markets. The Nikkei in Tokyo closing down 0.8%. Shanghai and Hong Kong just turning into positive trading in the past while. And the Kospi and Seoul finishing the day up by 0.5%. We're keeping an eye on oil prices for you today as well. Of course, another subject that's been very sensitive to tensions over in Ukraine. WTI crude and Brent crude both down around 1% today, but still trading around $92, $93 a barrel, so not giving up many of those gains that they've had in the past couple of weeks. Well, finally, for me, workers at an Amazon warehouse on New York's Staten Island will vote next month on whether or not they want to unionise. The vote at the JFK 8 warehouse will take place between March 25th and 30th. Now, that's the same time as staff in another Amazon warehouse in Alabama will be voting on whether or not they want to join a union. They had already rejected unionisation last year, but the vote was thrown out by the National Labour Relations Board in the US because of what it said was Amazon's inappropriate interference in the election. Interesting, Sharon, to see all of these warehouses deciding to make these decisions now. We know there's been discussions ongoing about unionisation in Starbucks as well, so clearly a change of mood there.
I was just going to say that to you, Stephen. We saw Starbucks just a couple of weeks ago even, wasn't it?
So it's a question for all of these companies as well, is that how they're going to deal with this and also how workers, this seems to be spreading across the country.
One to watch. Stephen Carroll from our business desk, thanks for joining us.